You're listening to the Roofing Success Podcast, a show created to inspire roofing contractors to achieve optimal success in their roofing businesses. I'm the host, Jim Molina, the co-author of the book, Internet Marketing for Roofing Contractors, How to Triple Your Sales and Turn Your Roofing Website into an Online Lead Generation Machine. I'm also the co-founder of Roofer Marketers, the digital marketing agency for the roofing industry. On each episode, I'll be sitting down with industry leaders to talk about their processes, the lessons they've learned, and how to find success in roofing. Hey, welcome to another episode of the Roofing Success Podcast. As always, please follow, share, comment, like. If you want to take the conversation beyond what we're just talking about here, go to Facebook, type in Roofing Success, and join the Roofing Success Facebook group. We just started a Roofing Success Instagram page. If you want to go and hit subscribe on there too, or follow us over there, and you'll see a lot of the good clips from the shows if you're not catching them the full episodes. Today we have another successful roofing contractor. I think we got a lot of great things to talk about. Xavier Molina, M3 Roofing, Miami.
Yes, sir. In the house. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks for having us.
The weather's a little better there than it is for me right now, I'm sure.
Yeah, we've had a good run of some pretty solid weather, so we're not complaining.
Well, Xavier, tell our audience a little bit about your story, how you got into roofing, and how you founded M3.
Yeah. So, hi everybody again. Thanks for having us. We're really excited to be here today. So a little bit about us. So we're a family-owned and operated business, much like many roofing companies out there. But we actually got into the industry. I got into the industry doing insurance claims and doing estimates and build back estimates for a general contractor. Shortly after that, we started doing interior remodels and doing the build backs, and then started up my own company doing that. And it was in the summer of 2017, actually. When we wanted to analyze the business and see which way we wanted to head. And we decided to do roofing. Roofing was always as part of our scope of work on a larger or a smaller scale. So we decided to tackle that on. And it was kind of luck of the draw because that was in summer of 2017. And then in September of 2017, we had a big storm hit in Hurricane Irma. And that hit us here in Miami and South Florida. And that really just took to business and catapulted it. And we took off from there and never really looked back.
So when you were making the decision that, hey, we're going to specialize in roofing, we're going to focus on one, I think a lot of contractors get lost in that, trying to do too many things well, right? Trying to do too many, be the expert at too many things and be the local leader in too many different areas. What were some of the things that you guys were thinking about in terms of how you made that decision?
Yeah. So one of the things and again, like to your point, we did it all. We did bathrooms, we did windows and doors. We did roofing as part of the scope of work. We did flooring, we did electrical, we did plumbing, we did just so much. And then what we did is we actually took two things into consideration. We did what were our customers most happy with, what product we provided our customers were most happy with, and two, which was the most profitable, which had great margins. And so when we looked at those two, we were like, hey, let's stick with roofing. Let's try it out. Windows and doors was always an option, and we still have that avenue open. Although we're not doing it right now, it's still open, but we decided to go and run with roofing.
I like that. You went and looked at what you were doing the best at, right? Essentially,
right.
Like, hey, let's just take a look. Where are our strengths, right? And
100%.
And dealing with happy customers is always much better, right?
Correct. And again, the remodeling on the inside, or doing a lot of scope of work, you try to please everybody. That's part of who we are, and we want to make everybody happy. Sometimes you miss the mark, and so we wanted to analyze. Okay, if we're going to move forward, where are our clients the most happy in, and what are they doing? And that's what we're going to start with and analyze first.
Yeah, in remodeling, there are a lot of decisions, right? There are, at every turn there is a decision, right? And maybe what you think might be the best option. The client thinks this is, but then there may be division within the household of your clients too, of what might be the right decision, right?
Yeah,
It
always.
goes on and on and on. When you're building a roof, like, there's, material selection, color selection, things like that, but they're not in it every day. Right. They're not, they're standing in their kitchen every day. So they see those grout lines, right? They see
you're hitting the nail on the head right now for sure. And the inside of just like every call, you get, and there's just so much with the roofing, like to your point, that the decisions are made kind of up front. Yes, some things do arise at the time of that everybody addresses. That's not a problem. But the bulk of the decisions are made at the beginning before the project even starts. So you're able to move quickly through the project and do that, which I think led to happy clients. The remodeling side, like every turn, there's this, there's that, a fixture change, this. I want the outlet over here now. I want to change the grout color. Or I want the flooring, the paint, the house paint. It's just like you said, decisions at every turn.
I could definitely see how that leads to a harder customer experience, right? It's a more challenging customer experience. So it's harder to please. You really have to be good at everything. And then you're dealing with a lot of different subs, and those subs overlap, and those, and the plumber's like, hey, I don't like the way that the framer did this. And hey, the cabinet
everybody's
guy
pointing
is like,
fingers. Everybody's pointing fingers.
Yes. And then they're hating on each other, and, like, man, what kind of electrician do you hire? He does this, and what kind, now it's not as easy for me to do this. Right. Like,
correct.
Yeah, it's so from the management perspective of those projects, I would guess that it's more challenging too. We talked a little bit about kind of some of the things that you've done since you moved into roofing, right? Got out of all the homes remodeling and things like that, focused on roofing, and you guys spent a lot of time in your customer journey and in mapping out processes.
Correct.
So let's talk about how you started with that customer journey.
Yeah, so one of the things we did a lot when we started the roofing company is starting to create systems and processes. So one of the main things we wanted to focus on was obviously starting with the customer journey, starting with the very basic, which is the beginning, which is customer intake. So when a client calls a new lead, how does that lead get handled? Who does it get sent to? What is the customer being told? How is it being scheduled? How is the follow-up? So on and so forth. And it's just a whole process we did, just starting with the client first with the intake. And we start there, and then we go through the process. Okay, after the intake, then you have the appointment. What happens at the appointment? What to expect? What is the sales guy doing? What does the sales process follow-up look like? Once that job gets sold, then what's the next step? How does that happen? What does a client go through? What the client should expect? And it's just the chain of reaction from the beginning, starting from client intake, all the way to the end. So we focused really on that and what it looked like, and it's just test and tweaking because we didn't know. You kind of have to go and figure it out.
I was talking to a friend of mine. He's been on the podcast twice now. Nick Brannon from Hero Roofing down in Georgia, and they did a similar thing. Like, they mapped their customer journey. And I think this is such an important thing that companies can think about. Starting with, you can even go before the intake call, right? Like how you want to be perceived in your marketing, in your social media, in your, if you're doing any door to door, if you're like, how you want to be perceived in the community, all of that branding, your logos, your wrap trucks, all of those things, you could get that really nailed down. And then that transfers over to what you talked about is that client intake. Now, how are they being handled when they have that first, the first human connection with our company? Right. Before they reach out to you, it's more, maybe it's digital or they're talking to a friend or family member. So they're, that's part of the customer journey also. But that first conversation with the first conversation they have with a person in your company. And
so, So I'm sorry to interrupt you. What you said was right. So the customer journey starts with client intake, but we also have, part of, to your point, and I'm glad you said that, was the perception of who you are as a brand or as a company, we actually have something called a tone of voice guide, which is, it's an internal document that we have for all our employees and everything, which is, states who we are as a company, how we speak to clients, what our colors are, what our logos are, all that stuff, kind of like a brand guideline, as well as a tone of voice guideline. So, everybody speaks the same language. So, how are we being perceived? So when you talk to somebody in our office, you're getting the same tone, the same everything, from whether you're talking to who's ever doing your scheduling or you're talking to the production manager or the project manager. Everybody's speaking to the client in the same way and following the same guidelines.
That's awesome. So let's talk about that. I've always heard of brand guides and things like that, but a tone of voice guide, right? You're saying the same things, you're doing the same thing. Let's talk about that. Elaborate on that. Like, what are some of the important things that you've included in that tone of voice guide?
Yeah, so the tone of voice guide, it's like I said, it's more of an internal document, and so it's more for our staff.
Yep.
And what it does, it basically explains to our employees, or especially even for new hires, on who we are as a company and what we stand for. So
like
it has
core values.
Yeah, so it has our core values in there.
Yeah.
But it kind of goes in a little bit more and like explains in detail like what that core value actually means for us.
Nice.
Like one of our core values, for example, is accountability. And what that means is that we hold everybody lovingly accountable. So, we're not yelling and getting snarky with somebody because they did something incorrectly. Hey, you did something wrong. Let's look at it. Let's work on it together, and just being more, holding them lovingly accountable. So we go into that as well. We go into explanation of, how we educate the clients. We're always educating clients, so it's something we're big on. So we look at that as well on there. So there's a few other things that go in that tone of voice guideline, but it's just basically a rundown of who we are. Like, if you want a medical term, like our genome, or like our, who we are as a company deep down, and so everybody can understand and follow that same guideline.
Yeah. And that's important. And that's when you map that customer journey, these are some of the things that help you define what the experience that you're providing that customer at each stage, right? And having things like a tone of voice guide, now you can, that probably helps the conversations be consistent between that initial client intake specialist, but also with the project manager, nice. That's awesome, man.
Correct.
So in that client intake specialist role, I've been talking a lot about this recently. I think that's the missing piece in a lot of companies. I think personally that they're like, a lot of contractors will be like, I need more leads, or I need a better closing rate, right? They look at leads and closing rate. Right. And they miss this piece in the middle, and that's that client intake specialist. How did you guys what was the decision to develop that as a strategic role in your company?
Well, one of the things we, like everybody, like you said, that's what we first focused on. We wanted leads and then conversion, and we're looking at this. Then we're like, okay, when a client comes in, what do we expect? One of the main things we focused on was, we're looking at what everybody else was doing, and we try to be different. So we wanted to take what the industry standard is, if you will, and try to think outside the box and see what was missing. To your point, we identified that was missing. So anybody can call into the office, but then what happens after that? How is that customer getting handled, and how is that lead being treated, and how are you logging that? How are you tracking that? Because you want to track where's the lead coming from? How did the lead get to you? So that way, when you go back and do some analysis, you can track, hey, where is this coming from? What works? What doesn't work? How are they hearing about us? Let's continue to do that. Let's not do that anymore. We're not getting any calls from there. So all those factors came into play as we started analyzing, decided, okay, we're getting a ton of calls into the office, but where are these leads coming from? Let's put somebody in that role to take in the calls and just really have a list of questions that they ask the client when they call in. Aside from the, what's your name, phone number, address, all that basic stuff, let's ask a few more detailed questions so we can have some more information.
What I like about that is now you have consistency in that role, and and that is how you create measurability, right? Like if 5 different people, if it was like, well, Xavier answers the phone sometimes, and Sue answers the phone sometimes, and John answers the phone sometimes, and so, right, and no one has a specific checklist, script, whatever you want to have in that intake process, then you're not really measuring something. You're measuring 2 different things, right? Or 4 different things, or 5 different things. So having one person that is essentially running through the exact same process every single time, now that's a way where you can really measure it. And then if you put 2 of those positions in the same place, now you can measure them against each other.
Correct.
Right? Like now you could say, well, this person A in this position has a higher appointment set rate. Why is that? And you can listen to those phone calls, and you can hear, right? Like you can measure it, and
you have data you can go off of. You have something you can go off of and do that. Now, that's one of the things. And so it's not just creating and doing that, but you have to document this. You have to create the process and like write it out for somebody, so it's repeatable, because you want it to be consistent. So it's repeatable. And and unfortunately, I think we spoke about this before. There's turnover, and sometimes there's might be somebody new in that position, and then you want that new position or the new person in that position to be able to follow the exact where the other person left off, and follow that, or you have growth, and now you got a second person doing that position. That way they follow the same process, and now you have consistency in the brand and consistency in your process.
Definitely. And so what do you think are the key things in the script or in that set that make that role extremely valuable when they're asking these certain things, or what are they doing in that role that make that role that create the highest value from that role?
We have a list of questions, and I think the one that really stands out to us the most, because then it kind of answers a question to us that we can go and expand on. So yes, you have your basic on the client intake specialist: name, phone number, address. What are you looking to do? Is it a roof repair, or is it a re-roof? Are you doing an insurance claim? You have some lists, but I think the one question we ask is, how did you hear about us? So we have multiple sources. So it's a family friend, a referral, a previous client, a lawn sign, a truck driving down the road, Instagram post, social media. So whatever it is, we have a category for that, and we track that. And what that allows us to do is we can pull monthly reports and be like, look, this month we received a ton of phone calls from lawn signs. Okay, so let's make sure that whoever's handling lawn signs understands the importance of what that means to us from a lead generation standpoint, to make sure that we're getting that done, and continue the consistency. So I think that really is understanding where your leads are coming from, so that way you know where your dollars are going. If you're doing marketing, or where your dollars are going, or where you need to up your dollar, your budget or your marketing.
Yeah, or focus on, right? Like you're saying, the yard signs aren't, they yard sign might not be like a dollars tracked kind of thing, but it's like, hey, how quickly are we getting that yard sign staked? How, because if it takes us 4 days to get that yard sign in the yard, now we lost 4 days of having that yard sign in the yard. And if that's a great driver of revenue, we need to tighten that process up, right? Let's talk about some of the things. You guys focus a lot on brand and referrals and in your business. And let's talk about that a little bit in the marketing and branding that you've done for the company.
Mm-hmm.
Focused on the brand, logo, wrap trucks, yard signs, social media have all been kind of the major drivers, correct?
Yes, those are the major drivers. The trucks being wrapped and making sure they're all wrapped consistently. So we have, one of the things as a small business owner, you look for the best price. So you quote out different places. And then one of the things we decided to do was stick to one place, because that way they had our file and they had what we wanted. They had our colors, they had everything. So that way when we did it with one, they're like, hey, we're doing the next truck just like we did the other one. They already have that in place. Again, consistency. to make sure that everything looks the same. So, the lawn signs, the social media posts, but one of the things we wanted to do, and one of the things we're big on is education. So from the branding standpoint, we're your neighborhood roofologists. And it's a term we coined because we really like to educate the customers. And whether they choose us or not, we just want to make sure that they're educated so they can make the best possible decision for their home and for their re-roof project or their repair project, or whatever the case may be. That's something we really focus on our brand, is making sure that we're honest and we educate the clients.
That's awesome. And so in that education process, that's kind of through, you guys bring that in through from like all of your social media posting all the way through to the kitchen table, I assume?
Yeah, so it actually starts at a client intake specialist. So,
okay.
So one of the questions we ask is what materials on your roof? A lot of people honestly don't have an idea what's on there. Unfortunately for us down here in South Florida, we have all types of materials, not just asphalt shingles. I mean, we have clay tile, we have cement tile, we have, we do have asphalt shingles, we have dimensional, we have 3-tab. There's just so many different materials on a flat roof. So we have a ton of those too. So, and they just don't know. They're like, hey, I need a new roof. Well, what do you have? Okay, let's, then we go back. Client intake specialists can go on Google Maps and see what they have, and on the image, so they can let the client know, like, hey, by the way, this is the material you have on your roof, and then we'll document that. So it starts way up there at the client intake specialist, and then as we go through the process, we educate the client, not just in the sales appointment. We let them know what we find and all that, but also in our social media post. We educate, just give out free information. We try to constantly give out free information to educate.
And so in that education, like what kind of feedback do you get when you get to that kitchen table?
So interesting you say that. So Thursday, let's say just this past Thursday, I went to a client, and it was a lead from our social media and lead from Instagram. So I get to the client and I'm here, get up on the roof. I do what I do. And I go down and speak to the client. And when I'm speaking to the client, they kind of abruptly stop me halfway and we're like, look, you're the expert. I see you on social media. You know what you're talking about. Whatever you say, I'm going to do. Like, I get it. I'm like, whoa. Okay. So, it's setting a level of rapport with the client before you can get there, so it actually it took me back because I'm like, man, this is working. Like, people are starting to pay attention. And at least for our local market, and so it does help when you get to the kitchen table and you classify yourself as the expert. In our case, we're roofologists.
Yep, and so it's amazing. It's hard to measure on the front end when you're going through the effort of making your social media posts, and you don't know who sees them, who doesn't. You don't know, right? There was a book. The name of the book escapes me, but one of the things that comes out from it is like out of 100% of people on like social media and things like that, 1% are content creators, 9% are contributors, and 90% are lurkers.
Wow, that's a big number.
Because and if you think about it, that's kind of what happens. Like you do a social media post, you're the 1% for producing the content. Then you have some people that will comment, right? And those are the contributors. They're engaging and things like that. But really, the value is in the other 90% because you don't know who's watching.
Yeah, we don't, and that's one of the things. And I struggled with that. I mean, the office knows. We hired somebody to do our social media in the office, and they follow me around during the day and just take video. And I'm like, yep. Oh, gotta record another video. Yep. But that's the stuff that matters, that you don't see because you don't know who's watching. But then you get to a client and we sell a $30,000 roof without it practically getting there. And it was all based because of the post you did.
Yeah. And it's like they're at that point, it's just don't screw it up.
Right. Right.
Like there's a point of it. It's just like, just stop talking, hand contract over, and they sign, right? You may not,
that's what I tell our sales guys. I'm like, look, we're giving you leads. Like this is coming from so-and-so. Like this should be a walk in the park. Go ahead and take it, do it. Just don't screw it up, make it happen. And
Do you score leads in that manner? Like, hey, this is coming from a referral. We know that, it's a past customer that is, referred this person to us. This should be a slam dunk for you. Or, hey, this person heard about us. They found our Google My Business listing and they called in. They have no idea who we are. Educate them a little bit more on our company. Do you guys measure that at all?
Yeah. So again, it comes from where the lead's coming from. So we know, if it's a past client, previous client, who that client was, if it's coming from an attorney, if it's coming from an insurance adjuster, if it's coming from wherever the case may be. So we do track that. Now, where our business right now is almost all retail. So we do have, we try to create that raving fan and then try to get the lead from them. And then, go on and so forth. So a lot of our referrals are word of mouth still. A lot of referrals, that's a big chunk of it in previous clients. So we try to, we definitely do track that. So we can pull a report, like I said, to our client intake specialist and where that lead came from. And then we can, thank that customer or just know that where our clients are coming from.
Yeah, for sure. Going back, you were talking about when you mapped this customer journey, you told me that you guys, that you created processes and systems around your social media. What types, I was talking to a contractor earlier today and she was like, how do I get my team to implement this? I know they have to do it, but they're not implementing it. So is it only you creating social media for the company? Do you have other people in the company that are creating content? And how have you built systems and processes around that?
Yeah. So if it was just up to me, we'd probably create very little content because as an owner, I'm not just working, on the business. I'm also working in the business. So, I'm out there selling, I'm out there on the, project management, I'm out there doing things. So there's a lot that occupies my time. So if it was really left up to me as a business owner, we have very little content. So what we decided to do is we brought on a marketing agency that handles our social media posts. So they specifically focus on our posts on Instagram. We do a lot of our social media advertisement or social media on Instagram. The reason we chose Instagram as our main platform is because it's very visual. And I guess now to your point where you mentioned, 90% lurkers, they're literally just scrolling through and looking.
That's right.
So we hired a company to do our social media posts, mostly on Instagram. And then what we ended up doing is hiring an internal content creator for stories and reels. So we have a part-time employee that comes in 3 times a week and basically either follows me around or follows one of our sales guys around or goes to projects and takes videos, but they come in 3 times a week just to create the content to post on stories and reels alone. And then paired with our marketing company that does the posts, then we internally do stories and reels. You pair that together, and that's how we do that. Now we try to create the system and process where we try and do stories every single day. I think posts we got down to 3 times a week, and then stories or reels every single day. You have to constantly be active on there.
Yeah, because they go away. Well, I don't know if reels, not reels, but the stories.
The stories are gone in 24 hours, so you've got to constantly pop up in their feed.
That's right. That's what we talk about, that brand impressions, right? So whenever someone opens their Instagram account, they can scroll through the feed and they may or may not come across your post depending on how Instagram is showing your posts. But if they're following you, that right at the top, you're in their stories.
Sure.
If you have the profile with the most recent story is at the front.
Right.
So it's always
constantly there.
Yeah. So it's like even if it's just someone, we do that in our business for roofer marketers. It's just that you'll every time you go on, there's a story from us, right? We're always in your stories, and it's just a brand impression is the way that we look at it, right? It's we want someone to see our brand over and over again. If they watch the story or not, they see our logo, right? They see our logo.
They see it. Brand recognition, impressions.
Yeah, exactly. So
we have that saying, out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah. It for sure. And so you did it in two ways. You have an in-house person, and then you have a marketing company that does more. I've always found it challenging to have an outside company doing social media posts for a company, because it's hard for them to be authentic to your brand sometimes. What type of posts do they do for you?
So they do, and again, one of the things we've met heavily with the company that we hired is, they'll come in every few months just to touch base and see what's going on. But before we hired them, we gave them that tone of voice guide that we have, right? Because if we're going to post information, and I'm not going to keep track of everything they post every single day or whenever they do post, I need them to follow our brand guideline and our tone of voice. As long as they follow our tone of voice guideline and our brand guideline, and they post correct, true information, and they post stuff about our company or whatever then we're good. Good.
So are they posting more like, I just popped onto your Instagram and stuff like that. It's like 3 ways to save money on a new roof.
Correct. That's
things like that.
Correct.
Yeah. So that's the type of stuff. And then I see posting client reviews. They're posting. So is that another type of thing?
Yeah, they'll post client. They'll create the content. So they'll do tips. And, we'll do a lot of tips on there. Again, we're big on education. So in informing our clients. Or potential client. So we'll do a lot of posts on education, on tips, roof tips. Obviously, client success stories are big. Project highlights is another one. So if we have a project, highlight a finished project or a progress of a project. Those are also things that they will post.
That they'll post,
Yeah, they'll post that. So they have access to our CRM software. We listed them as a user, so that way they can just go through projects and look at. And since we use pictures for everything, they can go look at the final drone pictures that were taken, and then they can use that or in progress pictures of projects. They have access to all the information via our CRM to be able to grab information or at least visual content, so that way they can create a post for it.
Yeah. And I think that's where I find like that's where I find like that's where they hit a ceiling when someone is posting for you. Like you have to definitely define how they're going to be posting, what they're going to be posting, and things like that. They could come up with educational content and before and afters and project and customer success stories, like you're saying. I think that's a great foundation for that. Then you have posts going out, right? You always have posts going out, and then you built upon that with the in-house person to do more of the stories, reels, video content. Is what you're shooting there. So in there, what types, because like you categorize those education, client success, and the like project updates, what are the categories that you're doing with your in-house person, or have you categorized that?
Yeah, so it's a fairly new position for us. So we recently we got them in, and so what happens is since we have a marketing agency that's handling our posts, what our in-house employee is doing now is handling with stories and reels. So what we're doing is just constant posting. I don't know where we read it or, one of those things that just comes across. One of the main things you want to be is just constant post. You want a constant post. And I got caught up on, what are we going to say? What are we going to do? It's got to be perfect. It's got to do this. And in reality, it doesn't. It's just, you've got to get on the camera. You've got to turn it on. You've got to talk about what you're doing, and you just got to put yourself out there. And don't be so concerned about what it is you're talking about. Just the fact that you're out there talking about whatever it is you're doing that day or whatever you got going on, and creating that content to be present and create that, impression, much like you said earlier.
Yeah, that it is. It's just doing it. It's more important, right? It's much more important. We all get held up on, should we make it perfect? Like we need.
I did. That's me. I'm guilty of that.
I am too. It took me a few extra months to start this podcast back in 2019 to it took me a while and then at a point I was like, you know what, just do it. And I started doing it. Right. And and then it evolves from there, and you can always get better at what you do, but you can't get better at what you don't do. right?
Correct.
Like it's just
Correct. And one of the things we started, and you took that big leap in starting the podcast. One of the things we started doing a monthly Ask Your Roofologist. And one of the things I got caught up when we started this is, every month I have to get on the camera and answer questions. When we first started, there was no question. Nobody was sending any questions, and so you're like, oh, well, I'm not going to do it. Nobody sends any questions. And that's not the case. You just got to get on there. You pick questions and you answer, common things that, that I get asked all the time, and I'll speak to that. But right. I think that fear paralyzes a lot of people, and then, they don't put themselves out there, but just got to, like you said, just get out there and do it.
Yeah. I always tell people that what are the questions that you get asked most often? Like you always, right. Homeowners are always asking questions. And what I've been teaching people how to do, this was back in video blogging days. This is, right. we're talking about
going back.
Yeah, we're going back 2012, 2013 area.
Right.
Maybe 11, but video blogging. And when I started training people on doing this back then, I always told them, once you start doing it, you will see content everywhere. You'll start to see it, like your world opens up. So you start, it's right. a forced thing at first. You have to come up with, hey, all right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And then you're driving down the road and you go, that's a great piece of content. That's a great piece. Or you're up on a roof and you're like, oh, this is a good piece of content right here.
Yeah.
Boom. And you start, like, once you get in the rhythm of doing content, you start to see opportunities for more content.
Sure.
Have you experienced that?
It happened this morning. So before the podcast, I went to drive by one of our job sites, and it's a building we're doing down in downtown Miami. And so I go up on the roof, the 5th story, and I'm there looking at it. And this is day 4 of the project. We've already done a ton of videos, and I'm like, well, what else do I talk about? I'm like, oh, wait, look, hold on. Look at this. This is cool. Yeah. And then, because I'm thinking of who the end user is or who can potentially see this, and something that, hey, this is something cool to point out. Or it's just something cool to point out anyways, it's something, right. You come across that you think is interesting, but like, hey, this is neat. Check this out. Or, hey, this is going to be an issue. Look at this. If this doesn't get addressed, this needs to get addressed because it's going to be an issue. Like just education and finding those little points. It happens, like you said, it happened this morning, and it happens more than I thought would happen.
Yeah. And it's so amazing how that happens. Like it just opens up, and then you almost, now you're going to have to make that guy full-time, and he'll just follow you around all day long. It's
it happens. It happens every now. He comes in twice. So he comes in 3 times a week, and the morning half of his day is basically following me around and just creating video and content. And and he even comes up with some ideas that I didn't think about. Like, hey, look at this. I think he thinks this is cool. So I'm like, okay, if you think it's cool, fine, let's do it. And just create the content.
So having someone, I think that hiring someone, writing that paycheck may also lead to you doing it as a business owner.
Correct. It's 100%. That's a little analogy on that is working out, right? I have a trainer, and I do it because he comes to the house, and he comes at 5:30 in the morning, and he comes and meets me where I'm at. That's and right. He's there at my house at 5:30 in the morning. If he wasn't there at 5:30 in the morning, I can guarantee you I probably wouldn't be waking up to go work out when I do. So yes, having somebody that's there physically that you're cutting a check and payroll to, you're like, well, I got to make this work because I'm paying for it.
That's right. They're there, right? This is our time. Let's, this is the time that we're doing this. How did you find this person?
So we just did a simple post on Indeed. I think it was ZipRecruiter or Indeed, and created that. And to be honest, we're hiring for a lot of positions. We're in a state of growth right now. So we're hiring project managers, we're hiring production coordinators, we're hiring all kinds of positions, But when we put out that social media position, the amount of applications that came through the door, I'm like, why can't I get this many for project management? Why can't I get this many for production? It was just an onslaught of applications for that position. So you kind of have a big pool. This age of information society, right. Social media is up, everybody's kind of doing it now. So the applications, we got a lot of those.
And I think that's almost it's going to be a much more common position in a lot of businesses. Content creation videographer, like
Right.
the content creation manager, whatever you want to call them in
Right.
your position, that it's almost it's essentially a necessary role,
Very. Yeah.
you know.
When we were looking at it, I'm like, why can't, like, I'm not hiring this position now because I need a project manager first. I'm not hiring this position because I need another sales guy. I'm not hiring this position because I need this first. And we got so many candidates. I'm like, looks like we're hiring this position first,
Yeah.
and we going through, and it's led to some leads already. It's led to more content creation. It's led to a few other things, so don't get caught up so much in what it is you need right now. And, oh, I don't have a budget for that. Or I didn't have a budget for that. And it wasn't in our cards. We put it out there. We want to see what was there, but I needed other positions first.
Yeah.
But we just had to bite the bullet and be like, all right, let's hire this position. And it's so far it's working out.
Nice. When you were going through that process, this position to me is a creative position. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not as straightforward as a project manager. Like, do you have experience and how well can you manage a project? Right. There's and show me your past experience. In a creative position, it's a little, that position is different. And a lot of times that employee is a little different in that regard, right? They need time to put things together and edit and do, right? They're a different, but how did you determine, yep, you're the right fit?
So one of the things we looked at too is, this could be faux pas, this could be whatever you may call it, but technology is there are very few. As we get older, there's a lot of new things coming out, and it tends to gravitate to more of a younger crowd. So what we ended up doing was looking at the demographics of our applicants. And so we looked at our applicants and we're like, hey, I think we need somebody that's really big into technology, somebody that's younger, that understands kind of social media, that is active in their personal social media life as well. So they understand how to create the content and do that. So then when we would interview, we would ask kind of those questions, how do you post? Do you post? Do you whatever? We didn't ask for their personal handles or tags. That's none of our business. But what we wanted to make sure is they knew how to create the content and knew what was trending or what was that. And that just, again, they didn't have a social marketing degree social media marketing degree. They didn't have this. They just knew how to handle social media and post. And that's really all it is we needed, is somebody that understands how to post, how to maybe edit a video, how to just kind of move things around and make things look good. And that's really what was the driving factor on who we hired. Nice.
And so then you're also hiring project managers, you're hiring other positions.
Yep.
One of the things that we didn't go into in your customer journey, we talked about the social media, kind of how they're finding you sometimes with your brand and social media. Talked about that client intake specialist, that first impression with the company. Now let's go a little bit further in the way that you've systematized your project management in relation to that customer journey.
Yeah. So one of the big things that we focused on back in 2017, as we started changing into roofing, and then we had the storm hit, and then $1 million in business just came out of nowhere. We're like, okay, we need to figure something out. We need to create systems and processes. We started with client intake and we went down the road and we kind of did like a chart of, the customer journey and so on and so forth. One of the main things for us in systemizing and doing things and processes was getting a CRM software, which we spoke about. Mm-hmm. Being able to manage all of this in a central hub is absolutely 100% necessary. Going off of papers and still working out of a truck and still working out of paper, of folders and all that, that's great when you're starting, but as you scale and you get larger, that's just going to be almost impossible to do by paper. Going electronic and going, through a CRM software to be able to track this stuff was absolutely critical for us. So we interviewed some, we looked at a couple different ones. There's some that are roofer specific. There were some more that were just builder specific. We settled on one and we really dove into it, and we just started plugging into it and just committing to using it in its capacity and everything it had to offer. So we incorporate that from client intake because we put it in there and there's, they can answer all the questions and we have a place that stores that, to the production side and the sales side. The sales, or before we get to production and sales,
Yeah.
Sales process, the estimate goes out through the CRM portal, so we can track it. We know when the customer saw it, when they last viewed it. We can track that. Then in the production side, we have a schedule, and we can map out all the projects on when one's coming up, which helps out one of our positions, roof runner. We were talking about lawn signs. They can see when projects are starting and what day they're starting a month in advance, so they can go ahead and put a lawn sign, or to, get ready for this project, or find out about the material for the upcoming project, all that stuff ahead of time using the production calendar. And then also billing goes through there as well, and everything gets billed. So it's really finding the CRM software to be able to manage all our steps and processes.
Definitely. So what you've done is your CRM matches your customer journey in a way, right?
Yes,
it's the tool that allows for your customer journey to be more efficient. Would that maybe a better way of putting it?
Efficient and implement it. So again, like I said, we looked at a couple of other ones, and then we figured out our customer journey and what we needed the program to do. And then we found the one that it did and allowed us to do that. And then the program itself taught us things like, oh, we can do this with the program. Let's implement this. And something we didn't know. So yes, finding that CRM that will match what it is you need it to do. And sometimes the CRM will allow you to do more things that you weren't capable of before, which it has for us.
Yep, definitely. What else? What are you doing on we skipped sales. So in that customer journey. So what are you doing in the sales process that what kind of systems and how do you maintain the consistent experience in your sales process?
So the sales and the intake are kind of hand in hand for the very first step, because as we get the client intake and we do that through our CRM portal, we send out an appointment confirmation. So our appointment confirmation will have the sales rep, we call them roofologists, who will have the roofologist picture on the confirmation email that will go through the portal. So then that way the client knows who's going to their house ahead of time and what that person's going to look like. So we have that go out through the client intake specialist side. And then on the sales side, they will send out a text to the homeowner or phone call 30 minutes prior to arrival, letting them know they're en route. They can do that either through their phone, or they can also do it through the CRM. Once they do that, the sales process, we have our estimating software or estimating side of the CRM. We have templates and formats and our estimates and all that, cost catalogs and cost codes and everything to be able to set up our estimate to then release it to the client via the CRM. And the reason we do that from the sales process side is because we have someone in the office who does leads reports. So they can track, hey, you went to go see this client and so the estimate's still not released because it's not released on the portal. It's not released on the CRM. So they can track whether the estimate even went out or not. Or from a follow-up standpoint, hey, the estimate went out on a leads report on so-and-so date. What's the status of it because it's been out for so long? So again, that sales process gets fed into the CRM, and we're able to track so many things with it that just helps us, go along with that sales side.
And it's measuring everything, right?
Measurable.
And that's, your business is people.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's making sure that your people are doing your process, right? People,
Correct.
Process, product, Marcus Lemonis, the prophet,
I love that show, by the way. Great show.
Yeah. People, process, product, right? So your product is roofing, your people, you have your people, and then you have the ability to measure that process. Hey, where is this? Has that been done? All of those things are measurability in there. When have you then taken the processes that you have in place and your tone of voice guide, your core values and things like that? Are you using that as a way, or how are you using that to measure the people?
Mm-hmm.
So not just, I guess, you're using the CRM. Are they getting the things done that they need to? But then how are you measuring like what they're saying and their performance based on the core values and things like that? Are you doing any employee measurement based on?
So that's a great question. We don't do employee measurement. What we do is we have the tone of voice and we have the brand guidelines, which they follow. And what we've done is we've created the system and processes to match our brand guideline and our tone of voice. So as long as they're following the system and process we have created, then we know that they're doing they're following the tone of voice or the brand guideline that we have set up and set forth. So we've incorporated that into the process. And if they follow the process, then the process is getting done. Then that's how kind of we track, make sure they're getting it done. Like, for example, the leads. If the estimate, we have a timeline, the estimate goes out within 48 to 72 hours after seeing the client. If we go back and look at the leads report and that's not getting sent out, well, you're not really meeting the client's expectation that we gave them in the appointment confirmation email, because we told them you're going to go see them and you're going to get an estimate within 48 to 72 hours. And if that's not getting done, then that's not being met. And then that sales cycle is breaking, or, we need to find out what's going on there.
Yeah, nice. For sure. So what do you think the greatest insight that you can share with our audience has been in helping you guys find success in your roofing business? Yeah.
So, one of the things I'm big on networking and speaking to other guys that are in our field, right, in our market. So I do talk to other roofing contractors and guys that are bigger than me and guys that are smaller than me, and and see what they're doing, what they're not doing, what works and what doesn't work. And some will be open to a conversation, some won't be open to the conversation. That's fine. But I found a couple guys that we communicate with and see what works and what doesn't work. And there's companies that are 3 times as big as me, and from a revenue that I wish I had, but when we have the system and processes in place that they don't have per se. So I think the biggest thing for us is, or the biggest insight I can give is, kind of what we've been talking about this whole time, is making sure you have system and processes in place and make sure that they're measurable. That way you can track what is actually going on in your business, instead of taking a wild guess at it. You can know what's missing, what you need to implement, where there's strengths, where there's weaknesses, and how you can improve, and putting that in place. We spent a lot of time early on in the business, and we always test and tweak and we always adjust, but we've spent a lot of time putting systems and processes in place to allow for the growth, because we have all our processes written down. So I just need to hire somebody to get into that position. Boom, go with it. This is what you need to do. Because we've already outlined that. So don't think where you're at now, but think where you want to be and set yourself up for that.
Awesome, man. This has been another episode of the Roofing Success Podcast. If you would like to generate more sales through your digital marketing efforts, please visit roofermarketers.com and get a copy of the book, Internet Marketing for Roofing Contractors: How to Triple Your Sales and Turn Your Roofing Website into an Online Lead Generation Machine. Also, check the training section of the website for guides on everything from running effective pay-per-click ads to how to properly set up your Google My Business listing. This has been another episode of the Roofing Success Podcast. Thanks for listening.